They call my life's work garbage and sign it away for $0. Biggest mistake of their lives. You know that smell that hits you when you walk into an old garage? That mix of motor oil, gasoline, and damp concrete that most people wrinkle their nose at? That was my cologne. At 66 years old, I spent more hours in my garage than most people spend in their living rooms. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead like they've been doing since 1987, casting that blue-white glow over everything I'd built my life around. My hands told the story better than I ever could. Scarred knuckles from slip wrenches, burn marks from welding torch sparks, fingernails that never quite came clean no matter how much pumice soap I used. These weren't the soft hands of retirement. These were working hands. Honest hands. Marcus Aurelius once said something that stuck with me through 4 decades of engineering work. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I'd live by that. Every rusted bolt, every seized bearing, every impossible rebuild. You don't fight the metal. You work with it. That November morning, I was doing what I'd done 1,000 times before, rebuilding the rear Carter AFB. Not just any carburetor. Mind you, this was the original 4-barrel that came with the Hemi block. Getting the float level right on these old Carters is a lost art. The kind where 1,000th of an inch matters. The kind where patience isn't just a virtue, it's the whole game. I had the float bowl disassembled on my workbench. Parts laid out in perfect order like a surgeon's instruments. The radio played classic rock. CCR, Proud Mary. The concrete floor was cold even through my work boots. I'd been at it since 6 in the morning, which was late for me. Used to start at 4:30 when I was still working at the plant, but these days I let myself sleep in. Retirement, they called it. I called it freedom to work on what mattered. I had a system. Everything in its place. Clean rags to the left. Carburetor cleaner in the middle. Parts tray to the right. 50 years of habit doesn't just disappear because your birthday cakes need more candles. But that morning, I'd made one mistake. One stupid, careless mistake. The transmission fluid. I'd changed the day before on my truck, and I'd missed a spot when I was cleaning up. Just a small puddle, maybe the size of a dinner plate. Barely noticeable on the dark concrete. The kind of thing you'd walk past 100 times without seeing. I stepped back to grab a different size jet from my toolbox. My boot hit that puddle. Physics doesn't care how many years you've been walking. Doesn't matter if you've crossed that garage floor 10,000 times. Transmission fluid on concrete is slicker than ice on glass. My feet went out from under me so fast, I didn't even have time to put my hands out. I went down hard. 66-year-old bones don't bounce like they used to. I heard the crack before I felt it. That's the weird thing about serious injuries. There's this split second where your brain hasn't caught up yet, where you're lying there thinking, maybe it's not that bad. Then the pain hit. I've broken bones before. Fractured my collarbone in 1979. Broke 3 fingers in 1991. This was different. This was the kind of pain that makes your vision go white at the edges. The kind that makes you wonder if you're about to pass out. My hip felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through it. I couldn't move. Couldn't stand. Couldn't even roll over without waves of agony shooting up my spine. My phone was in the house. 30 feet might as well have been 30 miles. I laid there on that cold concrete, staring up at the fluorescent lights, listening to the radio switch from CCR to Led Zeppelin. When you can't move, you think. And when you're in that much pain, you think weird thoughts. I remember focusing on a cobweb in the corner of the ceiling, wondering how long that spider had been there, wondering if it was still alive. Stupid stuff. The brain's way of not dealing with the real problem. Marcus Aurelius had another one. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength. Lying there broken on my garage floor, I realized I had power over exactly nothing. My neighbor found me 3 hours later. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, had noticed my garage door was open and came to borrow a screwdriver. She's the one who called 911. She's the one who stayed with me while I drifted in and out. She's the one who probably saved my life. The EMTs were professional, efficient. They gave me something for the pain, before they moved me. I remember the gurney, the bright sky, the inside of the ambulance smelling like disinfectant and plastic. Then nothing. The hospital is where everything changed. But I didn't know it yet. Morphine is a strange thing. It doesn't take the pain away completely. It just makes you not care about it as much. Makes everything soft around the edges. Makes you agreeable. Compliant. That's important. Remember that. I woke up in a hospital bed with my right leg in traction. Fractured hip. Broken femur. They'd already done surgery. Put pins in. The doctor said I was lucky. At my age, a fall like that could have been the end. 6 months of physical therapy. He said, maybe a year before I'd be back to normal. Normal. What a word. I was drifting in that morphine haze, staring at the ceiling tiles when my kids showed up, Jason and Karen, 38 and 41. Should have been the proudest achievements of my life. Jason had my build. Tall, broad shoulders, strong hands he'd never learned to use. He'd bounced from job to job his whole adult life. Construction for a while, then sales, then some cryptocurrency thing he never explained properly. Always had a new opportunity. Always needed a little help to get started. Always just one lucky break away from making it big. Karen was sharper. Real estate agent. Did well for herself. At least that's what she told everyone. Drove a leased BMW. Wore expensive suits. Had business cards that listed her as a senior property consultant with some fancy firm downtown. She'd been selling houses for 15 years. They came in together. That should have been my first warning. My kids hadn't been in the same room voluntarily since Thanksgiving 2 years ago when Jason borrowed money from Karen and never paid it back. Dad. Karen's voice had that practiced sympathy. The same tone she probably used with elderly clients. Oh my God, Dad. We came as soon as we heard. Jason hung back by the door, nodded at me, couldn't quite meet my eyes. Mrs. Henderson called us. Karen continued. She pulled a chair close to my bed. Dad, you can't keep living alone like this. This is exactly what we've been worried about. I tried to respond. Tried to say I was fine. That I'd been alone in that house for 8 years since their mother passed, and I'd managed just fine. But the morphine made my tongue thick. Made the words come out slow. We've been talking, Karen said. She reached into her designer purse. Pulled out a folder. The hospital needs some paperwork. Insurance stuff. You know how it is. And we need to make some decisions about your care going forward. She opened the folder. There were papers. A lot of papers. The letters swam in front of my eyes. My reading glasses were back home, in the garage, probably lying next to that puddle of transmission fluid. This is just a consent form for continued treatment, Karen said. Her manicured nail pointed to a line at the bottom of the first page. And this is insurance authorization. The hospital won't continue your physical therapy without these signatures. A nurse knocked and pushed the door open partway. Mr. Miller? Sorry to interrupt. Insurance is asking about retroactive approval for your hip surgery. They need authorization today, or they're flagging it for review. Karen's face was all concern. See, Dad? We need to handle this now. Sign here first. Jason stepped closer. Handed me a pen. A nice pen. Probably expensive. Just sign where Karen shows you. Pop. We've got all handled. The morphine made everything feel distant, like I was watching this happen to someone else. I took the pen. Karen flipped through the pages, pointing. Here, and here, and here. Initial here. I signed. I like to say I read every page. I like to say I ask questions. But the truth is, when you're lying in a hospital bed with metal pins in your hip and morphine in your veins, and your kids are telling you it's just paperwork, you sign. There's one more, Karen said. She pulled out a different form. This one was on heavier paper. Legal paper. This is for asset protection, Dad. Your lawyer recommended it. If the hospital bills go too high, they could come after the house. This transfers it into a trust for your protection. Asset protection. Trust. Legal terms that sounded official. Sounded smart. The kind of thing a responsible person would do. I signed that one too. Good, Karen said. She gathered up the papers, tucked them back in her folder. You just focus on getting better, Dad. We'll take care of everything else. They left 20 minutes later. Jason still hadn't really looked at me. Karen kissed my forehead, said she'd be back tomorrow. The door closed. The room got quiet except for the beeping of monitors and the hiss of the Ford drip. I stayed in that hospital for 6 days. Physical therapists came twice a day. Torture sessions, I called them. Learning to walk again with a walker. Learning to get in and out of bed without screaming. Learning to accept that my body wasn't what it used to be. Karen visited twice more. Brought magazines I didn't read. Talked about how she was handling everything. How she contacted a great facility called Sunny Hills. How they had wonderful care. How I'd love it there. Jason never came back. On the 6th day, I'd had enough. The doctor wanted me to stay another week. Wanted to monitor my progress. Make sure the physical therapy was working. But I'd spent 66 years not lying in bed, and I wasn't about to start now. I told them I was leaving. They couldn't legally stop me. Signed the AMA forms. Against medical advice. Took my prescriptions. Called a taxi with a phone they'd finally given back to me. The ride home took 25 minutes. The taxi driver helped me out. Even helped me up the front walk with my walker. Nice kid. Immigrant from somewhere in Eastern Europe. Worked 3 jobs. Reminded me of myself at his age. I tipped him everything I had in my wallet. Then I looked at my front door. Really looked at it. The lock was different. New deadbolt. Shiny brass where my old scratch one used to be. I tried my key anyway, knowing it wouldn't work. It didn't. That's when I saw the sign. Right there on my front lawn. One of those standard metal real estate signs. The kind with the agency logo at the top. And attached below it, a white plastic rider panel with red letters. Coming soon. My house. The house I'd bought in 1981. The house where I'd raised those kids. The house where my wife had died in the bedroom upstairs. Coming soon. The walker had a little seat built into it. The kind for when old people get tired. I'd never used it before. Thought it was for people weaker than me. I sat down on it now. Right there on my own front walk. Staring at that sign. My brain was trying to process what I was seeing. Try to make it make sense. There had to be an explanation. Had to be some mistake. That's when I heard voices. Coming from the backyard. Jason's voice. He was on his phone. I don't know why I didn't call out. Maybe some instinct. Maybe just shock. I used the walker to move quietly around the side of the house. The gate was open. I could see Jason standing on the back porch. My back porch. Yeah, tomorrow morning, he was saying, the old man's going to Sunny Hills. They've got a bed ready. Karen handled all the paperwork. Power of attorney, the whole thing. Silence while whoever was on the other end talked. The property? Oh, yeah, we're clearing it this weekend. Karen's got a developer interested. Tear down, probably. Land value only. We just need to get rid of all his junk first. Another pause. I stood there, frozen. The walker suddenly felt like the only thing keeping me upright. The garage. Jason laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Dude, you should see it. It's full of the most useless junk you've ever seen. Old car parts. Rusted metal. Boxes of bolts. The scrap guy is coming Monday. Says he'll haul it all away for free, just to get the metal. We might even make a few bucks off it. He shifted his weight. Looked out at the yard. I pulled back slightly. Stayed in the shadow of the house. Trust me, there's nothing worth saving. Just an old man's garbage. Same stuff he's been hoarding for 40 years. Karen wanted to start cleaning out today, but I told her let's wait until he's settled at Sunny Hills. Don't want him freaking out. You know how old people get about their stuff. The conversation wrapped up. Jason went back inside. Into my house, where I couldn't go anymore. I stood there in my own backyard, leaning on a walker, looking at my garage. The place where I'd spent the best hours of my life. Where everything that mattered to me lived. They thought it was garbage. Thought it was junk. Thought it was just an old man's useless collection of rust and broken dreams. And maybe from the outside, that's what it looked like. The fluorescent lights were off now. The big door was closed. From here, it just looked like any other detached garage. Peeling paint, sagging roof, nothing special. But I knew what was inside. I knew what I'd been working on all these years. What I protected. What I'd hidden. What they were planning to throw away like trash. The morphine was wearing off. My hip throbbed. My leg ached. But the pain in my chest was worse. The pain that came from realizing your own children had betrayed you, had tricked you, had stolen everything while you were helpless in a hospital bed. Marcus Aurelius had one more quote I remembered, standing there in the shadow of my own house, locked out of my own life. It came back to me clear as day. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. I looked at that garage, at those closed doors, at everything they thought was worthless. They had no idea what they'd done, no idea what was really in there, no idea that their greed and their cruelty had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. But they were going to find out. I just had to stay calm, had to think, had to be smarter than my own pain and rage and heartbreak. The scrap guy was coming Monday. Today was Thursday. I had 4 days. For days before everything I'd worked for ended up in a crusher. For days before they destroyed something they'd never understand. I lowered myself back onto the walker's seat. My hands were shaking. From pain. From shock. From something else I couldn't quite name yet. The late afternoon sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the yard. The garage sat there, silent, patient, waiting, just like I'd have to wait, and plan, and figure out how to save everything from the people who were supposed to love me most. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Text message from Karen. Hi, Dad. Hope you're resting at the hospital. Talked to the doctor today. You're doing great. We'll come get you Sunday and take you to your new place. It's going to be so much better. Love you. I stared at that message, at those lies wrapped in emojis and false concern, at the casual cruelty of people who could steal your whole life and sign it with love you. The sun dropped below the fence line. The shadows grew longer. I sat there on my walker in my own backyard, locked out of my own house, listening to my son make plans to throw away everything that mattered. And somewhere deep in my chest, underneath the pain and the betrayal and the shock, something hard and cold and patient started to form. They thought I was just a broken old man, confused, helpless, easy to move aside. They were wrong, but I'd let them think they were right. For now, I had 4 days. 4 days to figure out how to fight back against my own children. 4 days to save 50 years of work from the scrap heap. 4 days to prove that rust and betrayal weren't the only things that lasted. The temperature dropped. November in the Midwest meant cold nights. I couldn't stay in the yard forever. Couldn't get into my house. Couldn't even get into my own garage without making noise they'd hear. I pulled out my phone again, scrolled through my contacts, found the name I needed. Big Mike, old friend from the plant. We'd worked together for 30 years. Retired the same month I did. He answered on the second ring. Frank? That's you? My voice came out rougher than I expected. Mike, I need a favor. And I need it now. There was no hesitation. That's the thing about real friends. The kind you've worked beside for decades. The kind who've had your back through strikes and layoffs and all the other battles. Where are you? My backyard. Long story. Can you come get me? Give me 20 minutes. The line went dead. I sat there in the growing dark, waiting, planning, trying not to think about what Karen and Jason were doing inside my house right now, trying not to imagine them going through my things, making plans for my life. Big Mike's truck pulled up exactly 19 minutes later. I heard it before I saw it, that diesel engine rumble that never changed. He came around the side of the house, took one look at me sitting on the walker in the dark. Didn't ask questions. Just helped me up. Helped me to the truck. We drove in silence for the first few miles. Then he finally spoke. What happened, Frank? So I told him. All of it. The fall. The hospital. The papers. The lock. The sign. Jason's phone call. When I finished, Big Mike's hands were white on the steering wheel. His jaw was set in that way I recognized from 100 union meetings. The way it got when someone was trying to cheat us. When management thought we were too dumb to notice. Those ungrateful. He bit off whatever he was going to say. What do you need? Time to think, I said. Place to stay. And help. When I figure out what to do next. You got all three, Mike said. Guest room's yours as long as you need it. And whatever you're planning, I'm in. We pulled into his driveway. His wife, Martha, came out. Saw my face. Saw the walker. Didn't ask questions either. Just helped get me inside. That night, lying in Mike's guest room, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't think straight. The morphine was completely gone now. Just pure pain. Physical pain in my hip. Worse pain in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jason standing on that porch. Heard his voice. Old man's garbage. Saw him laughing about the scrap guy coming to haul it all away. 50 years of work. 50 years of carefully protecting something nobody else understood. And it was all going to end up crushed into cubes of metal, sold by the pound. I'd spent my whole life as an engineer. Problems had solutions. You just had to find the right approach. The right tool. The right sequence of steps. But lying there in the dark of another man's house, I couldn't see a solution. Couldn't see a way back. They'd changed the locks. Had legal papers with my signature on them. Had already listed the property. Were already making plans to clear it out. The ceiling fan turned slowly above me, round and round. Hypnotic. My hip throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Steady. Relentless. Reminding me with every pulse that I wasn't the man I used to be. Marcus Aurelius said the obstacle is the way. But what do you do when the obstacle is your own children? When the thing standing in your way is the people you raised? The people who were supposed to be there when you got old and fell down? I taught Jason how to use tools. Spent weekends in that garage showing him how to rebuild an engine, how to read a torque spec, how to respect what you're working on. He'd been maybe 12, eager, curious, his hands covered in the same grease that covered mine. When did he stop seeing value in things? When did he start measuring everything by how fast he could sell it? Karen used to help me in the garage too, younger, maybe 8 or 9. She'd hand me wrenches. I'd teach her the difference between metric and standard. She'd laugh when I'd make mistakes. Tell me I dropped a washer. Keep me honest. Now, she was a real estate agent who saw my home as just another property, just another commission, just another listing to photograph and stage and flip. The clock on Mike's wall ticked, loud in the quiet room, each second taking me closer to Monday, closer to the scrap truck, closer to losing everything that mattered. I had 4 days. For days until they destroyed what they'd never understand. For days to do something. But what? I couldn't go to the police. I'd signed the papers myself. Under morphine or not, my signature was legal. I couldn't hire a lawyer. That would take weeks, months. And I didn't have months. I had 4 days. I couldn't physically stop them. I was 66 years old with a broken hip and a walker. Jason was 40 pounds heavier and 30 years younger. I couldn't reason with them. You can't reason with people who look at you and see a problem to be solved, an inconvenience to be managed. The fan kept turning. The clock kept ticking. My hip kept throbbing. And somewhere across town in my garage, under canvas and covered in dust, sat everything I'd worked for, everything I'd protected, everything they thought was worthless. I thought about calling them, begging, explaining, trying to make them understand. But I'd heard Jason's voice on that phone, heard him laugh about the old man's junk, about hoarding, about garbage. They didn't want to understand. They wanted me gone and the property cleared. Fast, easy, profitable. Mike had said he'd help, but what could he do? What could anyone do against signed legal documents and change locks and children who'd made up their minds? I rolled onto my side. The pain in my hip flared white hot. I bit down on it, breathed through it, waited for it to settle to the constant ache. The room was too quiet, too dark, too full of thoughts I couldn't organize into any kind of plan. Somewhere out there, the world kept moving. People were sleeping in their own houses, in their own beds, surrounded by their own things, secure in the knowledge that what was theirs couldn't just be taken away. I thought I was one of those people, thought I was safe, thought I'd earned the right to live out my years in the house I'd bought, the garage I'd built with my own hands. I'd been wrong. The ceiling fan turned. The clock ticked. The darkness pressed down. Monday was coming. The scrap truck was coming. The end of everything was coming. And lying there in pain, in exile, in the ruins of what used to be my life, I had absolutely no idea how to stop it. No blueprint. No solution. No plan. Just 4 days. And the horrible certainty that it wouldn't be enough. I closed my eyes. Not to sleep. Sleep wasn't coming. Just to stop staring at that ceiling fan. To stop counting the seconds on that clock. To stop thinking about Monday. But behind my closed eyelids, all I could see was that garage. Those closed doors. Everything inside that they'd never see the value of. Everything I was going to lose. The last thing I had left of the man I used to be. And I had 4 days to save it. For days to figure out what an old, broken engineer could possibly do against his own children. For days that felt like forever and no time at all. The darkness was complete. The pain was constant. The future was blank. I lay there and waited for morning, hoping that daylight might bring some answer I couldn't find in the dark, knowing it probably wouldn't, but waiting anyway, because what else could I do? Morning came whether I wanted it to or not. The light through Mike's guest room curtains was gray, November gray, the kind that makes everything look washed out and tired. I felt washed out and tired too. My hips screamed when I tried to sit up. 3 days of not taking the pain medication because I needed to think clearly had consequences. But fuzzy thinking would get me nowhere. Pain I could handle. Losing everything because I was too drugged to be smart, that I couldn't handle. Mike was already up. I could smell coffee. Strong coffee. The kind that could strip paint. He appeared in the doorway with a mug. Didn't say anything. Just set it on the nightstand and left. Good man. Knew when talking didn't help. I got myself vertical, got the walker positioned, made my way to the bathroom. The face in the mirror looked like it belonged to someone else. Someone older, someone beaten down. I splashed cold water on it anyway. Tried to wake up the engineer buried under all that defeat. By 8 in the morning, I'd made a decision. I had to see it, had to face them, had to try something. Even if I didn't know what that something was yet, sitting in Mike's house wasn't going to change anything, wasn't going to save anything. Mike drove me over. Didn't argue when I said I needed to go, just grabbed his keys. That's the thing about real friends. They don't waste time trying to talk you out of what you need to do. They just drive. We pulled up across the street from my house. The sign was still there. That generic agency sign with its cheerful, coming soon rider. Like it was announcing something good, something exciting, not the dismantling of a man's entire life. Karen's BMW was in the driveway, Jason's truck next to it, both of them there, together, probably going through my things right now, deciding what had value and what didn't, playing God with my possessions. I told Mike to wait, used the walker to cross the street, made my way up the driveway. The front door was open. Not locked anymore. Why would they lock it? It was their house now. Their property. I was just some old man who used to live there. I walked in without knocking. My house. Still felt like my house. Smelled like my house. But everything was wrong. Boxes everywhere. My books stacked haphazardly. My mother's dishes wrapped in newspaper. My life being packed up like inventory. Karen came out of the kitchen. Stopped when she saw me. Her face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, then annoyance, then that practiced real estate agent smile. Dad, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the hospital. I left, I said, kept my voice level. Calm. Seems like I needed to check on my house. Your house. Jason appeared behind her. He didn't bother with a smile. Pop, this isn't your house anymore. You signed it over. Remember? I remembered. I remembered morphine fog and papers I couldn't read and being told I had no choice. But standing there in my own hallway, Looking at my own kids, sorting through my own belongings, something shifted inside me. Not rage. Rage would be useless. Something colder. Something more calculating. The part of me that had solved impossible engineering problems for 40 years. The part that looked at a broken machine and saw the solution nobody else could see. I remember signing insurance papers, I said carefully, in the hospital, while I was on heavy medication. Karen's smile got tighter. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out a folder, the same folder from the hospital. You sign a quitclaim deed, Dad, transferring the property to Jason and me for asset protection. Your lawyer recommended it. What lawyer? Your lawyer, Mr. Patterson. We consulted him before we came to the hospital. He said it was the smartest move given your medical situation. That was a lie. I hadn't talked to Patterson in 3 years. Not since he did my will. But arguing about it wouldn't help. I could see it in their faces. They had their story, had their paperwork, had their justifications all lined up neat and tidy. I want to call him, I said. Patterson, right now. Jason actually laughed. Short, mean. Go ahead, Pop, call him. He'll tell you the same thing we're telling you. You signed a legal document. Quitclaim deeds are ironclad. You voluntarily transferred the property. Even if you were on medication, you're competent enough to sign medical consent forms. You're competent enough to sign property transfers. And even if you wanted to fight it, Karen added, her voice dropping into that practiced sympathy tone, litigation takes years, costs tens of thousands. And honestly, Dad, we'd have to bring up your mental state. The falling, the confusion, how you've been living alone in this house that's falling apart. A judge would probably order a competency evaluation. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. Fight us, and we'll have you declared incompetent. Take it to court, and we'll paint you as a confused old man who can't take care of himself. Marcus Aurelius wrote something about this, about being wronged. He said, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Even old Marcus knew, even 2,000 years ago, people were people. Family could hurt you worse than enemies. But he also said this, the best revenge is not to be like that. So I changed tactics. Right there in my hallway, surrounded by boxes of my own life, I let my shoulders slump, let my voice get quieter, older. Okay, I said, you're right. I can't fight this. I don't have the money or the energy. The house is yours. Karen's face showed relief. Jason just looked satisfied, like he'd won something. But I want my tools, I continued. My things from the garage. That's all I'm asking. Let me take what's mine from the garage, and I'll go. No lawyers. No fighting. They exchanged a look. The kind of look that said they were thinking about it. Calculating whether letting me have some rusty tools was worth avoiding potential legal hassle. Fine, Karen said, but we need to see what's in there first. Make sure it's actually just tools and not something that conveys with the property. Conveys with the property. Real estate speak for something valuable we might want to keep. My daughter, the agent, always thinking about value, always thinking about the deal. We walked the garage. All three of us. Me with my walker. Them striding ahead like they owned the place, which legally they did now. The big door was still closed. I had the keys on my chain. The same keys that didn't work in the house anymore. But the garage keys still worked. For now, I unlocked the side door, reached in, and hit the lights. Those fluorescent tubes buzz a life. Same sound they've been making for 37 years. And there it was, my life's work, looking exactly like garbage. The body was there, visible but wrong. I positioned it that way on purpose years ago. Turned sideways, up on blocks. No wheels, no glass, covered in dust and old paint tarps. The kind of faded canvas that had been there so long it looked like part of the concrete. The fenders were visible. Purple, but the wrong shade of purple. Faded, rusted around the edges. Covered in years of grime and oil splatter. Looked like something that had been sitting since the 70s. which technically it had. The hood was off, leaning against the wall. Also rusted, also wrong-looking. Old mattresses were stacked against one side, the kind people dump in alleys. Stained, torn, perfect camouflage for what was underneath them. Boxes everywhere. Milk crates full of bolts. Coffee cans full of screws. Old oil drums. Shop rags that hadn't been wiped in decades. The organized chaos of a man who collected instead of threw away. And, in the corner, under a layer of greasy canvas, what looked like a pile of scrap metal. Engine block. Transmission case. Rusty chunks of iron that looked like they'd been salvaged from a junkyard. Jason walked around it, kicked one of the fenders lightly. The rust flaked off. Genuine rust. I created it carefully, applied it, aged it, made it look exactly like what it appeared to be. Jesus, Pop, this is what you've been working on? This rust bucket? Karen wrinkled her nose. It smells in here, like oil and mold. Dad, this is a health hazard. It's a project, I said quietly. I was restoring it. Restoring what? There's nothing here to restore. This is scrap metal. Jason pulled out his phone, started tapping. I've got a dumpster company coming tomorrow. 40-yard container. They'll haul all this junk for free if we let them keep the metal. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral, kept my voice defeated. When I asked, tomorrow morning, early, we want this cleared out by the weekend. Karen's got a developer looking at the property Monday. He wants vacant lot pricing. That means this garage comes down too. The garage. The building I'd reinforced myself. Insulated. Climate-controlled. The place where I'd spent 10,000 hours. Coming down. Demolished. Like it had never existed. Karen was already walking back toward the house. Dad, you can take whatever hand tools you want. Wrenches, screwdrivers, whatever. But this car thing and all these barrels and boxes, that's all going in the dumpster. We're not paying to store your junk. This was it. The moment, I could feel it. If I didn't make the right move right now, everything was lost. They'd throw it all away before I could stop them, before I could save anything. I thought about my options. I could tell them what it really was. Show them, make them understand. But greed would just change form. They'd want it for themselves. Would fight me for it legally. Use the same paperwork they tricked me into signing. Or I could let them think they were winning. Let them believe their own story about the confused old man and his worthless junk. I'll take it, I said, made my voice small. Defeated. The car parts. The boxes. All of it. I have friends with trucks. We'll haul it ourselves. You won't have to pay for anything. Jason stopped scrolling on his phone. Looked at me. You want to pay to haul away garbage? It's my project. I don't care if you think it's garbage. I want it. Karen had come back. She was shaking her head. That patient smile on her face again. The one that said she was dealing with a difficult child. Dad, be reasonable. Where you and put all this? Mike's house? You think his wife wants your garage full of junk moved into their driveway. I'll figure out. Storage unit. Something. Just let me have it. Please. They looked at each other again. Another one of those silent conversations. I could almost hear their thoughts. Let the old man take his garbage. Saves us the dumpster fee. Keeps him from making trouble about the house. But Jason hesitated. I don't know. If he's hauling it away, is that some kind of transfer of assets? Could we get in trouble with the IRS? And there it was. My opening. The crack in their greed I've been looking for. Americans fear three things above all else. Death, public speaking, and the Internal Revenue Service. Jason had just handed me the key to everything. I let a moment of silence hang there, then spoke carefully. Like I'd just thought of something. Like I was worried, too. Actually, I said slowly, Jason might be right. If I take this stuff and then sell for scrap, even if it's only a few $100, the IRS could flag it. And since you're the property owners now, and you let me take it, they might consider it an undervalued gift. That triggers gift tax reporting. They start looking at everything. Karen's face went pale. Gift tax. If the IRS thinks something was transferred for less than fair market value, they can call it a disguised gift, I continued, keeping my voice uncertain. Worried, old man confused about taxes. They audit the whole estate transfer. Look at every paper you signed, every value declared. If they think something was undervalued... Wait, Jason said. So if you take this junk, we could get audited? Possibly. Unless... I paused. Let them wait for it. Unless we document it properly, show that it had no value, that you, as the current property owners, are letting me remove construction debris and scrap material. If we do it right, with paperwork, then there's no question. I watched them thinking, watched the fear work through their calculations. An IRS audit was expensive, time-consuming, would delay the property sale, would dig into everything they'd done. Karen pulled out her phone, started typing. We need to document this. A formal release, stating that the materials in the garage are construction debris and scrap with no assessed value, that we're allowing removal as a courtesy. Exactly, I said, trying to sound relieved they understood. Just something simple, saying the contents are worth $0. That way, if anyone asks questions, we're covered. Jason was already nodding. Yeah, that makes sense. Karen, can you draft something? I can use a property release template. Just need to modify it. She was typing fast now, motivated, scared. The thought of an IRS audit had flipped a switch. I'll print it at the house. Have it ready in 5 minutes. They walked out, left me standing in the garage, surrounded by what they thought was worthless. What they were about to legally declare was worthless. In writing. Signed. Documented. I waited until I heard the side door close. Then I let out a breath I'd been holding for what felt like hours. My hands were shaking. Not from age. From adrenaline. From pulling off something I hadn't been sure would work. 5 minutes later, Karen came back with papers. 2 copies. Printed on her portable printer from the car. Professional. Legal looking. With the agency letterhead at the top. She read it out loud, making sure I understood, making sure we were all clear. The document stated that Jason Miller and Karen Miller, as the legal owners of the property at the address, were granting permission to Frank Miller to remove the contents of the detached garage. Said content consisted of automotive scrap, construction debris, used materials, and miscellaneous items with no assessed monetary value. Declared value, $0. The removal was being done as a courtesy and did not constitute a transfer of assets or a gift. Sign here, Karen said, pointing to 3 places. And we both signed as property owners. I signed, slowly, like an old man who was just grateful to get his junk. Jason signed. Karen signed. She handed me 1 copy, kept 1 for herself. You got until Sunday night, Jason said. Monday morning, the demolition crew comes to the garage. Whatever's not gone by then becomes their problem. They left, both of them, together, probably going to celebrate their clever handling of the situation, probably congratulating themselves on how smoothly they'd managed the difficult old man. I stood there, in my garage, alone, the document in my hand, their signatures on it, legally declaring that everything around me was worth nothing. I walked slowly to the car body, the rusted, faded, garbage-looking shell that they'd looked right past, that they'd kicked, that they'd dismissed as scrap. I reached out, touched the fender, felt the metal under the artificial rust and grime, felt the hours and years and care that had gone into protecting it, hiding it, keeping it safe for this exact moment. Poderpit Devchenko, I whispered, my mother's language, the Ukrainian she'd taught me as a kid. The words felt right. Hold on, girl. We're getting out of here. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same sound they'd been making for 37 years. But everything had changed. Everything had shifted. The old man they dismissed had just gotten them to sign away any claim to the biggest mistake of their lives. They thought they were clever. Thought they'd protected themselves from an IRS audit, thought they'd documented properly. What they'd actually done was create an ironclad legal document proving they'd declared this collection worthless. proving they'd given it away voluntarily, proving they understood it had zero value and chose to let me take it. No court in the country would let them take it back now, not after signing a document stating it was worth nothing, not after insisting on that paperwork themselves, not after documenting everything so carefully. I pulled my phone from my pocket, called Mike. He answered on the first ring. "I need the old crew," I said. "Everyone you can get. Tonight, I need this move before they change their minds." "How many trucks?" "As many as you can find. We've got one shot at this. And we need to do it right." Mike didn't ask questions. "Didn't need to. I'll make calls. We'll be there after dark." The line went dead. I stood there in the silence, in my garage, surrounded by what everyone thought was garbage, what I protected and hidden and waited decades to reveal. They thought they'd won, thought they'd gotten rid of me and my junk and my problems, thought they'd cleared the way for their developer and their profit and their convenient future. They'd signed the papers, done the documentation, protected themselves from an audit that was never coming, created a legal paper trail that would hang them better than any rope. Marcus Aurelius had another good one, appropriate for this moment. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. I wasn't arguing anymore. Wasn't fighting in any way they'd recognize as a fight. I was just being an engineer, solving a problem, using their own tools against them. The garage door was still open. I could see the driveway, the sign in the front yard, the house that used to be mine, all of it slipping away like water through fingers. But I had the document, signed and dated, declaring everything in this garage worthless, giving me permission to take it all. Legal, clean, documented at their insistence. They'd done it to themselves. I just helped them along. I looked around at everything one more time. The covered parts, the hidden pieces, the careful camouflage that had worked perfectly, that had let me hide the holy grail of American muscle in plain sight while they looked right past it. 50 years of patience, 50 years of careful protection, 50 years of knowing that someday, somehow, this moment would come. The sunset was coming to the gap in the door, orange and pink, the last light of day that had started in despair and was ending in something else, something harder, something colder, something that felt an awful lot like the first move in a chess game they didn't know they were playing. I touched the fender one more time, felt the metal, the cold, honest metal that didn't lie, that didn't pretend. That was exactly what was under all the rust and grime and carefully applied deception. Tonight, I whispered, tonight we disappear, and they'll never even know what they lost. The lights buzzed, the shadows grew longer. The garage stood there like it had stood for 40 years. Patient, waiting, keeping secrets. In a few hours, trucks would arrive. Friends would come. The real work would begin. The careful extraction of everything they thought was worthless. Everything they'd signed away. Everything they'd legally declared they didn't want. I looked at that purple fender one last time in the fading light. Touched it like you'd touch something precious. Something irreplaceable. Just a few more hours, I said quietly. Then we're free. Both of us. The metal was cold under my palm. Silent. Patient. Tonight, we'd disappear. And they'd never even know what they lost until it was far too late to get it back. The sun went down around 5:30 that November evening. I watched it from Mike's kitchen window. Orange and red bleeding into purple. Beautiful. The kind of sunset that makes you think about endings and beginnings. Mike was on the phone in the other room, making calls, gathering the crew. I could hear his voice. Low, steady. The same voice he'd use on the factory floor when we had a problem that needed solving quietly and quickly. No drama, just work. By 7 o'clock, trucks started arriving. Old trucks, work trucks, the kind that had seen decades of honest labor and kept going because their owners knew how to fix things instead of replacing them. Dodge Ram from 1987, Ford F-250 with primer spots, Chevy Silverado that burned oil but never quit, the old guard, That's what we called ourselves back at the plant. The guys who'd started in the 70s and 80s, who'd survived the layoffs and the automation and the corporate buyouts, who'd retire with pensions that were worth something and skills that would never go obsolete. There were 6 of them. Mike, Tommy Rodriguez, who could weld anything to anything. Earl Patterson, who'd been a millwright for 40 years. Dave Chun, who'd run the tool and die shop. Ray Williams, who'd operated the biggest crane in the facility. And Kenny Burke, who was small and wiry and could fit into spaces the rest of us couldn't. They showed up in work clothes. Steel-toed boots, canvas jackets, ball caps from companies that didn't exist anymore. They didn't ask why, didn't need explanations. Mike had called, said Frank needed help moving something important. That was enough. We drove over in convoy, 3 trucks. Tommy pulled a flatbed trailer behind his Dodge, the kind with the wood deck and the pipe rails, big enough to haul a boat or a disassembled car. The street was quiet when we arrived. 9 o'clock on a Friday night. Most people were inside watching TV or already in bed. The house was dark. Karen and Jason had gone, probably out celebrating their successful real estate deal, their clever handling of the difficult old man. We parked down the block, killed the lights, walked to the garage like we belonged there, because legally I did belong there, had it in writing, signed by them, documented. The contents of this garage were mine to remove. Construction debris and scrap material with no assessed value. I unlocked the side door, hit the lights. The fluorescent tubes buzzed to life. Same as always. Same as they had for 37 years. The crew filed in, stopped, looked around. I could see them doing the math. Seeing what everyone else saw. Rusted car body, boxes of junk, oil drums, scrap metal under canvas. The collected debris of a man who never threw anything away. Earl spoke first. Frank, this is what we came to move. This is what they think it is. I said, what it actually is. That's different. I walked over to the car body. The purple fender with its carefully applied rust and grime. Reached up and pulled the canvas off the top section. Underneath, protected by the fabric, the paint was different. Still purple, but brighter, cleaner. The real color starting to show through. Help me with this mattress, I said to Ray. We moved the stained mattresses that were leaning against the side. Behind them, wrapped in more canvas and plastic, were the doors. 2 of them, original, with the chrome trim still attached, tarnished but intact. Tommy whistled low. Frank, is this what I think it is? Depends on what you think it is. That's Mopar purple. Plum, crazy. It is. And those are E-body doors. They are. Day was already walking around a corner where the engine sat under its greasy tarp. He pulled back a corner. Saw the block. Saw the valve covers. Frank, tell me this isn't what I think it is. I didn't answer. Just walked to the workbench. Reached underneath to a spot that looked like regular wood, pressed in a specific place. A hidden panel popped open. Carpenter's trick I'd learned from my father. False bottom. The kind you'd never find unless you knew where to look. Inside was a metal box. Fireproof. The kind banks use for documents. I'd bought it in 1974. Kept it here ever since. Protected from moisture, from fire, from time. I opened it. Inside were papers. Yellow with age but preserved. Protected. Irreplaceable. The fender tag. The original metal plate that was riveted to the body at the factory. The DNA of the car. Every option. Every color. Every specification stamped in code. BS23 R1B. Barracuda Sport. 23. 2-door convertible. R. 426 Hemi engine. 1971 model year. B. Built at the Hamtramck assembly plant. And underneath it, the build sheet, the actual paper worksheet from the assembly line, handwritten notes from workers, paint codes, trim codes, the complete birth certificate of the vehicle. Gentlemen, I said quietly, let me introduce you to one of 1971 Plymouth Hemi, CUDA convertibles ever built. Numbers matching. Original owner. Completely disassembled and hidden for 50 years. The silence in that garage was absolute. These were men who'd worked around machinery their whole lives, who understood metal and engineering and craftsmanship, who knew what they were looking at. Sweet mercy, Earl finally said. Frank, do you know what this is worth? I have some idea. Your kids try to throw this away? They didn't know. And now they've signed a legal document saying it's worth $0 and given me permission to take it. Tommy started laughing. Couldn't help himself. Frank, you beautiful, devious old man. You set them up. I used their own greed against them. Now help me get her out of here before they realize what they've done. We worked like a pit crew, like the teams we'd been on the factory floor. No wasted motion. No unnecessary conversation. Just smooth, practice efficiency born from decades of working together. The body went first. We had to be careful. The metal was good underneath the camouflage, but it was still 50-year-old sheet metal. We used furniture blankets, straps instead of chains, lifted together, slid it onto the trailer, so gently it barely made a sound. The engine came next. 426 cubic inches of American muscle, cast iron that weighed over 700 pounds. Ray had brought a cherry picker, a portable engine hoist. We rolled it over, wrapped the block in moving blankets, lifted it like it was made of glass. Kenny was packing the small parts: carburetor, distributor, fuel pump, every bolt and bracket and clip. He was methodical, organized, numbered each box, made notes. This wasn't just moving junk. This was preserving history. The transmission, the rear axle, the front suspension, the steering box, the dashboard, every piece, every part, all of it carefully cataloged, protected, loaded. Around 2 a.m, Mike almost dropped a cardboard box. It was heavier than it looked, started to slip from his hands. He caught it, but not before I saw what was inside. Careful. I said it sharper than I meant to. Those are the original Carter AFB carburetors. Both of them. There's $15,000 worth of rebuilt carbs in that box. Mike's eyes went wide. $15,000 for carburetors. For the correct, original carburetors that came with a Hemi CUDA convertible? That's cheap. Finding them took me 3 years and cost me more than my first car. He set the box down very carefully, very gently, stepped back like it might explode. Maybe somebody else should carry that one. By 4 a.m, the garage was nearly empty, just oil stains on the concrete, some rags, a few coffee cans of rusty bolts that actually were worthless. We left just enough garbage to make it look like we'd taken trash, like we cleaned out the old man's junk. The real treasure was loaded, 3 trucks full. The trailer stacked carefully with blanket-wrapped pieces. Everything documented. Everything inventoried. Everything protected. I did one last walkthrough. Checked every corner. Every shadow. Making sure we hadn't missed anything. Making sure we hadn't left anything behind that would give away what we'd really taken. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Same sound they'd always made. But the space felt different now. Empty. Hollow, like a shell that had given up its secret. I was about to turn off the lights when I heard it. A truck door slamming. Voices, coming from the front of the house. I looked through the window. Dawn was just starting to lighten the sky. That gray pre-sunrise light that makes everything look flat and unreal. And there in the driveway was Jason's truck. He was early. Wait, too early. We got company, I said quietly. Jason's here. The crew moved without being told. Engines started. Trucks pulled away quietly. Down the alley, away from the front street. Tommy's trailer with its precious cargo disappearing into the gray morning like a ghost. I stayed. Had to lock up. Had to make it look normal. Had to see what Jason was doing here at 4:30 in the morning. I walked out the side door. Locked it behind me. Used a walker to make my way around the house. Slow. Old. Just a man checking on his garage one last time. Jason was in the backyard. He had a sledgehammer, a big real estate sign, the kind that's taller than a person, wood post, metal frame, big letters that would be visible from the street. For sale with Karen's agency information. The sky was getting lighter, pink and orange starting to show at the horizon. Jason picked a spot, right in the middle of the backyard, right where the lawn was flattest, right where it would be most visible, right where I knew the old heating oil tank was buried. The house had been built in 1965. Back then, home heating oil was common. Buried steel tanks in the backyard, 1,000 gallons, fed the furnace all winter, worked fine for decades. Until the 80s when natural gas lines came through the neighborhood, everyone switched over. Cheaper, cleaner, more convenient. The gas company ran new lines, connected new furnaces. The old oil tanks got abandoned in place. Most people left them, didn't bother with the expense of digging them up, just had them pumped out and left buried. Out of sight, out of mind. The real estate disclosures barely mention them. Property may contain abandoned UST, underground storage tank, for words in the fine print nobody read. But here's what happens to buried steel over 40 years. It rusts, corrodes, develops holes. Whatever residue was left inside starts leaking. Into the soil, into the groundwater. Slow, invisible, a ticking environmental bomb. I'd known about that tank since 1981 when I bought the place. The inspector had mentioned it, said it was decommissioned, said it wasn't a problem unless I was getting commercial loan. Residential loans didn't care, so I'd never dealt with it, never had it dug up, never had it tested, just left it buried and forgotten. Until now, until Jason was standing over it with a sledgehammer, about to drive a 6-foot wooden post right through the rusted top. I should have said something, should have warned him, should have told him to stop. But I thought about the morphine, the papers I couldn't read, the locks they changed, the way they dismissed me as garbage just like they dismissed everything in my garage, the way they'd laughed. Marcus Aurelius wrote about revenge. He said the best revenge is to be unlike those who wronged you, to rise above, to be better. But he also wrote this: the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. I wasn't being like them. I wasn't lying. I wasn't tricking. I wasn't stealing. I was just not warning them about something they should have checked themselves. Something any competent real estate agent would have verified before listing the property. Jason raised a sledgehammer, swung it down hard. The post hit the ground. He swung again, driving it deeper. The wood bit into the soil. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th swing, I heard it, a different sound, not the thud of wood hitting earth, a metallic clang. Hollow, the sound of something breaking through. Jason didn't notice, or didn't care, just kept swinging, driving that post deeper, pounding it through whatever was underneath. I watched him work, watched him hammer that sign into the ground, watched him seal his own fate with every swing. He was smiling, satisfied, proud of himself for getting such an early start, for being so efficient, for handling everything so well. He stepped back, admired his work. The sign stood tall and straight, professional, ready for tomorrow's open house, ready for the photos Karen would take, ready for the listing that would sell this property and make them both a nice profit. The sun was coming up for real now, orange light spilling across the yard, hitting that for sale sign, making it glow. Jason pulled out his phone, took a picture, probably sending it to Karen, showing her how productive he'd been. I turned away, walked slowly back toward the garage, toward Mike's truck parked in the alley, toward the rest of my life. Behind me, 3 feet under Jason's for sale sign, heating oil was starting to seep into the soil. Slowly, invisibly, the clock was ticking. The bomb was armed, and neither of them had any idea what they'd just done. Mike was waiting in the alley, engine running. He saw my face. Didn't ask, just opened the door, helped me in. We pulled away as the sun broke over the roofline, leaving that house behind, leaving that garage behind, leaving Jason standing proud in a backyard that was about to destroy him. The last thing I saw in the side mirror was Jason walking toward his truck, dusting off his hands. Job well done. Problem solved. Old man's junk hauled away. Property ready to sell. He had no idea. No idea at all. And that was perfect. 1 year. That's what it took. 1 year from the night we evacuated that garage to the moment everything came together. 1 year of careful, patient work. Mike had a barn, 40 miles outside the city. Big enough to hide everything. Secure enough to keep it safe. That's where we took it all. Where the real work began. Restoration. That's what most people call it. But that's not quite right. This wasn't restoration. This was resurrection. Taking something that had been hidden and dead for 50 years and bringing it back to life exactly as it had been born. I won't bore you with the details. The hundreds of hours. The specialized tools. The parts that took months to source. The research. The documentation. The photographs sent to experts. The debates about original versus reproduction. The careful balance between preserving what was original and replacing what couldn't be saved. Just know this. We got it right. Every detail. Every specification. Every part. Numbers matching. Original sheet metal. Original drivetrain. Original interior. The way it rolled off the Hamtramck assembly line in April of 1971. Plum crazy purple. White interior. White convertible top. 426 Hemi engine. 4-speed transmission. The holy grail of American muscle cars. One of 14 built. One of 7 that survived. The only one saved by its original owner. Barrett Jackson. January. Scottsdale, Arizona. The biggest collector car auction in the world. Where the serious money comes to play. Where auction records get broken. Where automotive history gets bought and sold under the lights and cameras. They gave us a prime slot. Saturday evening. Prime time. After the announcers had spent all day warming up the crowd. After the other impressive cars had established the mood. When the money was loose and the competition was fierce. I stood in the staging area while they detailed it one more time. Professional detailers with microfiber cloths and spray bottles. Making sure every surface was perfect. Every piece of chrome gleamed. Every inch of that plum crazy purple paint shone like liquid. They rolled it onto the turntable. The lights hit it. The crowd made a sound. That collective intake of breath. That recognition of something special. Something rare. Something they'd never expected to see. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena. Professional. Practiced. But you could hear the excitement underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present to you one of the rarest and most desirable muscle cars in existence. A 1971 Plymouth Hemi Cuda convertible. One of only 14 produced. One of only 7 known to survive. And this one, folks, this one is something truly special. The spotlight followed him as he walked around the car, pointing out details, building the story, building the drama, numbers matching, original sheet metal, original drivetrain, original interior, complete documentation including the original fender tag and the original broadcast sheet, authenticated by Galen Govier himself. And here's the incredible part, ladies and gentlemen. This car was purchased new by the gentleman standing right here. Mr. Frank Miller, original owner, single owner, rescued and preserved by the man who bought it 53 years ago. The bidding started at $500,000, jumped to $750,000, then $1 million. The increments got bigger. 1.2, 1.5, 1.8, 2 million, 2.2. I watched the numbers climb on the big screen. Watched the spotters in the crowd pointing to bidders. Watched the auctioneer's rhythm. Watched something I protected for 5 decades being valued, being fought over, being recognized for what it truly was. 2.5 million, 2.7, 2.9, 3 million even. The crowd was on its feet, cameras flashing, people cheering, the sound of money being made, history being written. 3.2 million, 3.4. I have 3.4 million. The auctioneer called. Do I hear 3.5? 3.5 for the Holy Grail? 3.5 million. A paddle went up in the back. The spotter shouted. The auctioneer pointed. 3.5 million. I have 3.5 million. Any advance on 3.5? Silence. That particular silence that comes when the price has gone beyond what anyone else is willing to pay, when the limit has been reached, when the hammer is about to fall. Fair warning at 3.5 million. Fair warning. Last chance, folks. This is the Holy Grail. The hammer came down. The crack echoed through the arena. The crowd erupted. $3.5 million. Sold. The second highest price ever paid for a muscle card auction. The announcer grabbed my hand, raised it like a boxing referee declaring a winner. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Frank Miller, the original owner. Let's hear it for him. The crowd was still cheering when they led me off the stage, still taking pictures, still buzzing with the energy of what they'd just witnessed. I walked carefully with my cane, slower now than I'd been a year ago, but steady, focused, clear. The paperwork took 3 hours. The auction house took their commission. The taxes would come later. But the check they handed me was real, tangible. 3.5 million minus fees. More money than I'd made in 40 years of engineering. More money than most people see in a lifetime. But it wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about being right. About knowing the value of something when everyone else saw garbage. About protecting what mattered even when nobody understood why it mattered. I flew home the next day. First class. Why not? I could afford it now. Landed in the evening. Mike picked me up from the airport. Drove me back to his place where I'd been staying. Where I'd been planning my next move. You see the news? He asked. What news? About your kids. About the house. I hadn't. I'd been in Arizona. Focus on the auction. Focus on the culmination of 50 years of patience. What happened? Mike handed me his phone. News article from 3 months ago. Local paper. The headline made me stop breathing for a second. Local property developer backs out after environmental discovery. Former homeowners face EPA cleanup costs. I read it twice, then a third time. The words almost too perfect to believe. The developer Karen had lined up. The one who'd agreed to buy the property for land value. The one who was going to tear down the house and build something new. He'd started excavation for the foundation. Hit something with a backhoe. Old steel tank. Rusted through. Leaking. Soil samples. Groundwater testing. Petroleum contamination. The whole 9 yards. The developer immediately backed out. Invoked the environmental contingency clause. Demanded his deposit back. Walked away clean. But Karen and Jason couldn't walk away. They were the property owners. Under CERCLA, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, also known as Superfund, property owners are strictly liable for environmental contamination. Doesn't matter if they caused it. Doesn't matter if they knew about it. They own the land. They pay for the cleanup. The EPA got involved. Phase 2 environmental assessment. Soil remediation requirements. Groundwater monitoring. The estimates ran between $200,000 and $400,000. Maybe more depending on how far the contamination had spread. Karen and Jason had spent the money from the house sale on other things. Jason's debts. Karen's business investments. They didn't have $400,000. Didn't have $40,000. The property was worthless now. Couldn't be sold. Couldn't be developed. Just sat there generating cleanup costs and EPA fines. Their credit was destroyed. Their assets seized. Bankruptcy proceedings started. The article mentioned that Karen was facing potential license suspension from the real estate board for failing to disclose a known environmental hazard, failing to order proper inspections before listing. I sat there in Mike's truck, reading and rereading, the pieces clicking together. The oil tank I'd known about for 40 years. The one I'd left buried and forgotten. The one Jason had driven a post through while installing his for sale sign. I hadn't caused it. Hadn't made them skip the Phase 1 environmental assessment. Hadn't forced them to take the property without proper due diligence. Hadn't told them to sell fast and cut corners to maximize profit. They'd done all that themselves. Their greed, their shortcuts, their assumption that the old man was too stupid to matter, and the property was too valuable to worry about details. Marcus Aurelius was right. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. I hadn't lied, hadn't cheated, hadn't stolen. I just let them make their own mistakes. Let their own greed destroy them. Let karma do what karma does when you try to wrong someone who's been patient longer than you've been alive. You knew, Mike said quietly. It wasn't a question. I knew there was a tank. I admitted. I knew it was old. I knew they were too greedy to check properly. I didn't know Jason would literally pound a hole through it. And you didn't warn them. Would you have? Mike was quiet for a long time. Then he shook his head. No, I wouldn't have. They found me 2 months later. I'd bought property by then. Small acreage outside town. Built a new garage. Climate-controlled. Properly insulated. Big enough for 3 cars and a full workshop. Bought a nice house, too. Nothing fancy. Just comfortable. Just mine. I was in the garage working on a new project. Another E-body Mopar. A 1970 Cuda. Not as rare as the Hemi convertible. But honest. Clean. Worth restoring. The sound of a car pulling up. Expensive car by the sound of the engine. I walked out. Karen's BMW. More dense than it used to have. Dirt here. She got out. Jason was in the passenger seat. He didn't get out. Just stared through the windshield. Karen looked different. Thinner. Harder. The expensive suit was gone. Jeans and a regular jacket. Hair pulled back. No makeup. The face of someone who'd been through something that changed them. Dad, she said. I waited. Didn't speak. Didn't make it easy. We know what you did. What did I do? The car. The garage. You set us up. I pulled the document from my pocket. The one I'd been carrying every day since this started. Folded and refolded until the creases were permanent. The one they'd signed. The one they'd insisted on. The one declaring everything in my garage worth $0. This is what you signed. I said calmly. This is what you insisted on creating. You declared the contents of that garage worthless. You gave me written permission to take it. You did all of this because you were afraid of an IRS audit that was never going to happen. You lied to us. I never lied. I asked if you were sure. You said you were. I suggested we document it properly. You agreed. Everything we did was legal. Everything we did was in writing. Everything was your idea. Jason got out of the car now. Walked over. He looked worse than Karen. That car sold for $3.5 million. We saw the auction. That was our money. That was our inheritance. Your inheritance? You stole my house while I was drugged in a hospital. You changed my locks. You threw me out of my own home. You called my life's work garbage and tried to have it crushed. The only reason you didn't destroy it is because you were too greedy to risk an audit. We'll sue, Karen said, her real estate agent voice trying to come back, trying to find some leverage, some angle. We'll take you to court, prove you defrauded us. I unfolded the document, held it up so they could see their own signatures. With this, you're going to walk into court with a legal document you insisted on creating, a document that declares in writing that you evaluated the contents of that garage and determined it was worth $0, a document that says you voluntarily gave it to me. You'll tell a judge that you're professional business people who were somehow tricked by a 67-year-old man with a broken hip. Karen's face went white. She saw it, saw the trap she'd built herself, saw how perfectly she'd been played, not by lies, not by fraud, by her own greed, by her own cleverness, by her own certainty that she was smarter than her old father. You did this on purpose, she whispered. You planned this. I saved what you tried to destroy. I used the legal document you created. I followed the rules you insisted on. Is that fraud? Or is that just being smarter than you thought I was? Jason's face was red. Anger. Humiliation. The realization of how badly he'd been beaten. The house. The EPA thing. That was you too, wasn't it? You did something to that oil tank. I did nothing to that tank. I said honestly. That tank has been buried since 1965. It's been rusting since 1985. You drove a for sale sign through it at 4:30 in the morning on moving day. You did that. You also skipped the Phase 1 environmental assessment to save money. You also failed to disclose a known issue to your buyer. You did all of that. I just knew it was there and didn't stop you from making your own mistakes. We're bankrupt, Karen said, her voice breaking. We lost everything. The house, our savings, my business. My license is suspended. We're ruined. You ruined yourselves. I just didn't save you from your own greed. They stood there, both of them, looking at me like they'd never seen me before, looking at the garage behind me, the nice house, the evidence of money, the life I'd built from the ashes of what they'd tried to take from me. That money should have been ours, Jason said quietly. We're your kids. We're your family. I reached into my wallet, pulled out a $1 bill, walked over, held it out to him. Here, I said, this is for the gas you use to drive out here, for your time, for whatever you thought you were going to accomplish by coming to my home uninvited. Jason stared at it, didn't take it. Take it, I said, voice harder now. Take this dollar. It's more than you deserve. It's more than you gave me when you stole my house. It's more than you offered when you tried to throw away 50 years of my work. Take it. He took it, slowly, like it burned his fingers. Now get off my property, I said quietly. Both of you, you're not welcome here. You're not family. Family doesn't steal from each other, doesn't lie to each other, doesn't try to destroy each other. You taught me that. You showed me exactly what you are. And I'm done. We're done. Don't come back. Karen's eyes were wet. Tears. Real ones. Dad, we're sorry. We made mistakes. But we're still your children. My children died in that hospital room when you put that pen in my morphine drug hand. What you are now, you're strangers who share some DNA. Strangers who tried to rob me. Strangers I'll never trust again. Now leave before I call the sheriff and have you removed for trespassing. They left. Karen driving, Jason in the passenger seat, not looking at each other, not speaking, just driving away from the life they'd tried to steal, from the father they'd underestimated, from the consequences they'd earned. I watched them go, the BMW disappearing down the long driveway, the dust settling, the sound of the engine fading to nothing. Then I turned around, walked back to my garage, back to the 1970 Cuda I was working on, back to my tools and my workbench and my fluorescent lights. The afternoon sun came through the windows, warm, bright, the smell of metal and oil and possibility. The radio played classic rock, the same songs I've been listening to for 50 years. The world turned. Life continued. I picked up a wrench, went back to work. The carburetor needed adjusting. The timing needed setting. There was work to do, honest work. The kind that had meaning, the kind that lasted. Marcus Aurelius had one more quote, the one I'd think about for the rest of my days. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. I'd done that. I'd been patient while they were greedy, honest while they lied, smart while they assumed I was stupid. I'd let them destroy themselves with their own character flaws while I simply protected what was mine. The sun moved across the sky. The shadows lengthened. The garage stayed warm and bright and full of purpose. Somewhere out there, Karen and Jason were figuring out how to live with their choices, how to rebuild from nothing, how to explain to people what had happened, how they'd lost everything because they'd been too greedy to be careful, too clever to be smart. But that wasn't my problem anymore, wasn't my responsibility, wasn't my family. My family was here, in this garage, in the metal and chrome and honest work, in the friends who'd shown up with trucks in the middle of the night, in the community of people who understood that value isn't always visible, that worth isn't always obvious. That patience is a weapon sharper than any knife. I turned the wrench, felt the bolt tighten, felt the satisfaction of good work done right, felt the peace of a man who'd been wronged and had found justice without becoming wrong himself. The radio played, the sun shone, the metal gleamed under my hands, and I was free, finally completely free. The engine would run again. The car would drive again. The work would continue. Because that's what you do when you survive betrayal. You don't stop. Don't surrender. Don't let the people who wronged you take away what makes you who you are. You just keep working. Keep building. Keep fixing what's broken and preserving what matters. The rest takes care of itself. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Same sound. Different garage. Better life. Honest life. Earned life. I smiled to myself. Picked up the next tool. The next part. The next problem to solve. Because that's what engineers do. We fix things. We solve problems. We make broken things work again. Even when the broken thing is justice. Even when the problem is family. Even when the solution takes 50 years and costs everything and gives back more than you ever imagined. We fix things. And then we move on to the next project, the next challenge, the next piece of honest work. The sun sets slowly, orange and purple, beautiful, the kind of sunset that makes you grateful to be alive, to have work that matters, to have one without becoming what beat you. I turned on the work lights, adjusted the radio, picked up where I'd left off. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own projects, its own problems to solve. But tonight in this garage, with these tools, with this honest work, everything was exactly as it should be. Perfect, complete, just the metal under my hands was cold and real and true. It didn't lie, didn't cheat, didn't pretend to be something it wasn't, just like me. And that was enough.